So in addition to regular means, which we illustrated in the previous video, there is something called weighted mean. And that's what, first of all, your syllabus is a weighted mean. Some assignments have heavier weights than others. They count for a greater percentage. Not everything is equal. And the same is true for a grade point average. Not every class you take is equally weighted. It depends on how many credits or hours it's worth. So we're going to talk about two kinds of weighted means. One that's reflect like a percentage base, like a syllabus, and one that's a GPA. So what I have here is the example of, boy, we changed colors. So I have an example here of a first semester freshman, and you can see his grades. So in order to get organized, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and write down what their score was and what the amount of credits were for that particular score in that class. Okay, so they indicated to us first that the student received an A in a 4-credit class. So this just helps me organize. Next, they received an A in a 1-credit class, like a freshman experience or a fitness for life or something. Then they received a C in a 4-credit class, a B in a 3-credit class, and then an A in a 2-credit class. So at first glance, a parent might look at that and say, wow, 3 A's, a B, and just a C, that's going to be a really good GPA. Let's calculate what the actual GPA is versus just looking at it. So before I can calculate GPA, which is a number, I need to convert all of these letters to numbers. I can't multiply and get a number answer unless I convert all these all these letters to their corresponding number. So in a typical grade point average scale, in case you do not know, an A is worth 4 grade points. A B is worth 3 grade points. A C is worth 2. D is 1. And if you get an F, nothing for you. Those are just standard. You need to know those. That's why a 4.0 means straight A's. So I've got to, first of all, convert all of these grades to their numerical score. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to convert my A to 4. My C is worth 2 grade points. My B is worth 3 grade points. And A's, again, are worth 4 grade points. So convert all your letter scores to number scores. And then to do weighted average, regardless of type, you always do score times the weight. In this case, the amount of credit or hours is the weight. So I'm going to go through and multiply my score times my weight. I tell you what, I'm going to erase this here just for the sake. Hopefully you wrote this down. If you didn't, you can always rewind the video. But I want to erase that little grading scale thing there. Okay. Score times weight all the way down the columns, the rows. 4 times 4 is 16. So I got 16 grade points. That student got 16 grade points for that class. They only got 4 grade points for the 1-credit class. They got 8 grade points for the one they got a C in. 9 grade points. Again, I'm multiplying this score times this weight. That's where all these numbers are coming from. And 4 times 2 is 8. Now, what I have here are all the total grade points that student earned. So to get grade point average, I have to add that list together. 20, 36, 45. So if I add this column together, I get 45. So now I have the total amount of grade points. That student earned 45 grade points. I need the grade point average, and what that means is I want to break this down into what's my average amount of grade points per credit. Per credit, that's where the average comes from. So what you then have to do is take the total grade points, so here's my total points, and divide by the total number of credits, or the total of all the weights. So I have to add my credit column together. That student attempted, if I add that column together, 4 plus 1 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2, that student attempted 14 grade points that semester. So 45 divided by 14, you do that in your calculator, and you get a decimal. So grade point average, just so you know, we always use 2 decimal places. We report it in the hundredths. So this one, although my calculator will say, if I'll scoot this over a little bit so I have room, my calculator says 3.214285714. I only want to the nearest hundredth. Be careful of your rules of rounding. You can't just cut it off and say it's automatically 3.21. Whenever you are rounding to a certain decimal point place, you have to look at the number just to the right If it's less than 5, your answer will stay, in this case, 3.21. If that had been a 5 or greater, it would bump up to the next number, which would be 3.22. So 3.21 is the GPA for that student, the weighted GPA. So this is the second type of weighted average. This is when you're dealing with percentages for your weights rather than a grade point average. So what I have here is just some random college syllabus and how things are weighted: test, homework, project, and final exam. So I've given the weights to you, and then I've given what a particular student had scored. So if you're putting this in your notes, pause the video so that you have time to copy all this down. Okay, so the process for solving this and getting the weighted average is the same as it was with GPA. And that is that I'm going to multiply the score times the weight. So the score in this case obviously is what the student made. So on this one it's a little bit tricky because I'm going to look here and say the tests were worth 60% and homework was 5, project is 15, final exam is 20. So if I add those 4 together, I do get 100%. In fact, I would have to if that's what the whole course grade is made up of. So when I see 4 tests right here, I know each one of those is not worth 60% because that would be 240%, and that's impossible. So what that means is I would have to take the average or the mean of these tests first, and that test average is what's worth 60%. So I'm just going to write those down here in anticipation of having to do this. So I know my test average that's worth 60% is coming from all 4 of those tests averaged together. So I would have that as my test score. And I'm going to put that next to the weight. The weight is 60%. That's what its weight is. Now, homework. The homework score, it says the student made a score of 100 on the homework. So the homework score was 100. That's going to get multiplied times 5%. Next is the project. The student scored a 98 on the project, and the project was worth 15%. Lastly, the student scored a 76 on the final exam, and the final exam was worth 20%. Now, I'm going to multiply score times weight. There's a couple things I have to do first, though. Well, obviously, I have to get the average of my test score. So that happens to be 79.75. So I'm going to round that. If I round to the nearest whole point, it would be 80. So I'm going to go ahead and write down an 80 for that test grade. Oh, look, my columns are all messed up. Okay, all you neat people are probably disturbed right now. I'm trying to act like I'm not disturbed. So 80 is my test score there. The other thing that I have to do before I multiply is I need to convert these percentages to decimals. So everything needs to be in decimal place. To convert a percent to a decimal, you're going to move that decimal place 2 places, and that tells you where it belongs. Be careful with 5%. A lot of students will put 0.5 because they think the decimal just goes in front of the number, but you got to move it 2 places. So that makes it 0.05, 0.15, 0.20. So one by one, you got your calculator out. You're going to multiply score times weight. 80 times 0.6, that gives me 48. And 100 times 0.05, that gives me 5. 98 times 0.15, 14.7. We're going to leave that one as 14.7 in this case. 14.7. 76 times 0.2, 15.2. So those are our points that they earned. In order to get the average, I need to add that column together, first of all, like we did before. So I need to get up how many total points they earned. I'm going to go ahead and just do this mentally, because let's see, 82. So they earned 82.9 points. And so technically you're going to do the same thing you did with GPA. If you'll remember, we took the total points and we divided by the total of the weights. Now, when you're dealing with percentages, when you add the weight column, now remember our weights have been converted to decimals. When you add 0.6 plus 0.05 plus 0.15 plus 0.2, you will get 1. Because it's 100%. You'll always get that. So technically, I'm just dividing by 1.00. That's the total of my weights, When you divide something by 1, it doesn't change the value. So the division step really is just a wasted step, but just so it's so that it's consistent with the other, I put that in there. So this student's average was an 82.9. That's a B minus. So if you look at those letters in the beginning, you might think, gosh, 3 A's, a B, and a C, that's probably a good high average. But because those lower grades were in higher weighted classes, that's what pulled the average down.